I'll go through. And so I see this. So if you guys can't tell, those are like little fish in this big river, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm like, I got my message from the universe. Like, yeah, it's better to be a little fish in a big pond. So I was gonna move to New York right after I saw this message, right? And then like the next week, I am sitting and I take my kids to the aquarium in Monterey. And I'm sitting there and I get another message. And it's the next slide. I don't know if any of you guys have been to like the aquarium, but this is a picture or a video of like when we're in the aquarium. Now, if you see like that's a big ass turtle up there, there's like big fish in there, but what do you pay attention to? You pay attention to the swarm, right? Like it makes up like a big mass, right? And amongst these big other fish, that's all you can pay attention to. So I was like, oh damn, like it's not being a small fish in a big pond, it's actually being a small fish in a little pond, right? Like I don't know. So I'm pondering these things. And next slide. And that's when I had my aha moment, like looking at it from a sense of community and connection. When we're all in community together, when we're all engaged together and we're all connecting, like we become like this big mass. And that's a lot of what we do with Unseen Heroes, is just like designing community to connect and create those points to where we all connect together so we can move as a big mass and we can be a big mass of fish in a small pond in Sacramento. So that's a lot of the work that we do. Next slide. And so it starts like this, right? Like I love this. I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but this is Finding Nemo, right? I think there's some audio on here. But even if you don't, like she's just I can kind of share, but you know, in this scene, she's asking all of these sardines a direction, which way to go, and they're telling her, working in community, which way to go to find Nemo. And this image to me is like, this is the power of connecting as a community when we're all working together, when we're all moving in unison. Like we can direct culture, we can direct community, we can direct the city in the right way to go. But if we're swimming and we're not working together, then we don't have that power of a collective. And so for me and the work that we do with Unseen Heroes and the stuff that we're building there, which I'll share, it's all in this idea of how do we work together to create community. Uh-oh. So I always say the sardine is small but mighty. Sacramento is small but mighty. It's the next slide. This is that same place. How many of you all are from Sacramento? Perfect. How many of you guys aren't? Don't raise your hands. You're here now, and that's all that matters. We're gonna get you to stay here. But I look at Sacramento and I think like we're a small but mighty place, you know. I've been around long enough to see like the Kings not be on a winning streak, and now the Kings be on a winning streak. Like it's like really exciting because it's been 16 years. So it's just interesting, like we're in this place in community where we're moving in a more powerful state. And I want that to be in the creative side too. So next slide. So imagine what would be possible if we moved in community by design. Next slide. Sacramento would be run as an inclusive place where folks of culture can thrive and live. And that's one of the things that we work to like really push forward in Sacramento. Next slide. A place where we can create connection between the gaps that exist in the current ecosystem. So let me ask you guys this, like when you're going out and finding information, where do you guys go to find information? Right? And what do you find? Like if you're gonna go somewhere in Sacramento that's cool, like where do you find that information? Where? TripAdvisor? What'd you say? Reddit. And see, it's interesting. So I always say, I always ask this question in any room that I'm in because it's an interesting thing. It's like, if you were to go somewhere else in a bigger city, it's like you immediately tap into all this different culture. But here in Sacramento, there's a gap that exists in like, you could be on a Sac State campus and be connected here in Sac State, but then not know anything else that's going on. Or you can be somewhere else and not know anything that's going on in Sac State. It's just this weird ecosystem that we live in where it's like, how do we bring that together? And that's part of the work that we do. Next slide. So I would say this, like, what if we had that asset? What if we had that connection? What would Sacramento be like for you all? Just fill in the blank, throw some words out.
Unified?
Unified, I like that. If you could just go somewhere, you like go to a website and like find some cool stuff, what would that feel like for you? I see you're thinking really hard about it. I love it.
Yeah. Vibrant.
Exciting.
Exciting. I love that. Thank you. Next slide. So I always talk about the risk because there's always a risk that happens when we don't move in community. And the risk here, you know, like for us too, we always look at the risk and how to mitigate the risk of all of these different things, because I feel like when you're going up against like the powers that be that don't want change, they always talk about, well, it's risky to do this thing. So I always say like, well, what would happen if we didn't move in community? Next slide. Sacramento just stays the same. That's the risk that we are like really sitting in right now. It's like, if we don't move in community, if we don't connect, if we don't utilize our skills, you know, together in unison, and we don't create that vibrant community where there's color and all of these different things, it stays the same. Next slide. And Sacramento continues to feel disconnected. So the work that we've been doing lately is just making sure that this doesn't happen for our generation, next generation, and generations to come. Next slide. So one of the things that we've been doing is filling the gaps in the current ecosystem. Next slide. So from a high level, the way that dollars fund, the way that culture moves, the way that things shape out, it starts with the federal government, goes to the state government, then it goes to the city of Sacramento, or it goes to the county of Sacramento, city of Sacramento, and then it funnels down to the consultants, some of the agencies, the foundations, the chambers, PBIDs or property business improvement districts, CBOs or community-based organizations, and then members, and then building owners. And like, but what I've existed in for the last 16 years now of building Unseen Heroes, which we started on the Sac State campus, was working below all of this up here. Next slide. And it's a barrier where creative entrepreneurs, creative businesses that are fueled by art, design, entertainment, and technology, like we exist in these spaces, but we're not given like real platforms in order to like really show what we do and like looked at as a valuable asset to the city. So there's a lot of different creative businesses. You talk about, you all are in there, designers, makers, events, breweries, media, wineries, information services, motion picture, video, like all of these things exist in what they call the creative economy, but we don't get front row seats like above in the slide before. We just kind of have to exist and figure it out. So next slide, what we've been doing is creating the space where all of these things connect, right? And imagine like what happens if, folks in here that are designers are teaming up with breweries or, creating an agency for design services that designs for wineries and or personal care. Like there's so much power when we work together in unison. Next slide. So some of the barriers I see are places for creatives to convene, like knowing where you can go to find your people, knowing where you can go to like see, culture and things that we want to see the world be. That's one barrier. Next slide. And then the other one is like creative entrepreneurs and creative businesses. I think we get a rap of like, because we are so creative and artsy, it's like, oh, that's a cute thing, but now go get a real job, is one of those messages that always comes across. And, I get to sit in some of these rooms with a lot of different powers that be. And it's always interesting to me because like, I come in like this, like I show up like me, jewelry on, glasses, shirts, like on the other side of the shirt, it's like there's a quote on the back, I'll show you guys later, but like, this is how I show up in any room because I wanted to show up like me and myself. But what I see is in even those rooms, like people are in suits and ties and things like that. And they're like, I used to be an artist, or I used to play, music, or I used to do this thing, but I got a real job. And it's like, oh, that's so interesting that you thought that you couldn't succeed in this creative industry and have a living and do that. It's like, I do that every day, but it's just a different mentality and it's a different connection point to the community. Next slide. So we see like a lack of ecosystem knowledge. So to even know, like, that's why I asked that question, like, where do you guys go to find your information? Because there's a lack of ecosystem here and the ecosystem knowledge that we even know that it exists, right? And then, that in it for the money, like some people who are creative are like, well, I don't want to be in it for the money. I just want to do my creative thing. But it's like, you can be very successful, make a lot of money and still be creative, borrowing capital to scale. That's been a big issue that we see. Like, if you're a creative business or you're a creative entrepreneur taking that leap, like, where do you go to borrow capital to like really grow your business? That doesn't really exist for us because we're considered a risk. And then technical assistance, just, having the tools to like really help us grow. There's not a lot of that. And then that last piece is like ownership of these different concepts, different ideas, different places. And like, that's one of the spaces that for us as Unseen Heroes, we've created a lot of culture in Sacramento, but we've also been displaced from a lot of places because once the artists and the creatives and the designers come in and make a place cool, it gets gentrified and then we can't afford to live there anymore. So until we start to move in a space of ownership and start to own stuff, we can move in power even more. So next slide. So imagine if all of those gaps that I just talked about were filled. Slide. Sacramento would be what? Throw some words out there. Inviting, I like that one. Anyway, I see for that widespread. I like that. Yeah, it would be more. Yeah, spread, inviting. Love it. Next slide. So the next point is like filling the gaps in the community. So one of the things that I learned in doing like events, like I would have told you we were an event agency before the pandemic, and we just produced a lot of different events. We would produce block parties, we would produce markets and empty warehouses, we would produce like different retail experiences, like what you would call pop-up shops, where we pop up for like 2 days and build out a whole space, and then 2 days later It's act like we were never there. But what I found is like in that, that's what creates culture and creates like coolness, which then everybody attracts to. And so I started to look at it from a lens of community development and looking at a community development lens. And so next slide, the strategy typically is this, like you have developers of the built environment, which are the developers, building owners, real estate people. And then you have developers of people, which are community-based organizations and neighborhood associations and grassroots organizations, things like that. And they don't talk. So what you have is people that come in and develop the people and make it cool, and then people with money will buy buildings and buy houses in that neighborhood and then develop those places, and they don't even talk to the other people in the neighborhood. So next slide, what we found is a place-based development strategy, which we work with everybody. Like we bring everybody to the table and say, like, what are your assets that you can bring together? Kind of going into that sardine model of collecting everyone and putting them together. It's like we all have great tools, and if we leverage them, then we can really make an impact, right? So we do that. Next slide. So there really is power in working in community and connection. So I'll go through some of the stuff that we've done, I think is the next slide. So this is one of the things that we've currently worked on. It's called Niger Boy. So this is on the corner of 15th and G. This sat like this for, I guess, ever. I mean, it was never anything else that I can remember, right? But it's this empty lot that was just there. So a developer came to us and he said, in 2 years, I'm going to build a building on this land, but I really want to have this space be created for Rashid, which Rashid is a small business owner that owns Niger Boy. He does Nigerian American cuisine, right? And he didn't have a space. And so they were like, well, maybe we can do a market on this place. And I was like, no, let's do something different. Let's like really push the limits of it. So next slide. This is what we designed for them. So it's an outdoor, open air restaurant specifically for Niger Boy, right? So he pulls his food truck in, and then we design seating for folks to sit down there, hang out, stage there, and then you enter through that space right there. So it's all enclosed. It feels like it's all little space, right? And then the beauty about this and thinking about it from a very inclusive lens is once Rashid is done, he's actually going to go underneath the building that they're building and have his restaurant there. So we said, how about we kickstart the campaign to let people know that by letting them taste this food now in this dope setting and hang out, but then also tell the story of in 2 years, he'll be able to be there and you'll be sitting in a restaurant and you got to experience the outdoor dining space, right? So next slide. So this is what it actually turned out looking like. And it's still there. So if any of you all want to drop by, like it's there. And so we did, our team, I won't say I did because I'm not the designer, but our team built out the whole brand for him. So that's one of the things that, you know, folks come to us for as well, is like brand packages for small businesses. And so for us, we wanted to really stay true to his Nigerian roots. And this is the brand that you can kind of check out if you go by there. So that's on 15th and G, right downtown. Next slide. And then that's what it's supposed to look like later. Well, they're going to start building out later this year. But it's a, I think, 4 or 5 story with Rashid's business at the bottom. And then people can live there. And what they're working on, which I think is really dope, is like a lease to own model. So it's creating affordable housing as well in the Midtown grid. So next slide. Imagine if transformation like this happened throughout spaces in the community. I always say that, like, you know, it's on us to like really dream up these things and then activate them. And that's like our true power. Like we're in a space of creativity where we can like draw something up. Like I saw Fong,
Yeah.
Like I saw your design of the book cover.
Yeah.
It's like that is a power for a lot of people to be a designer and be able to take an image and like put it into like that version, you know? So it's like that's one of the things I want to leave with you all is like you have a real power in design and being able to imagine things and dream them up. And so use that superpower more. Or as you go along, know it's a superpower. Next slide. And then that's another one, but we don't have to go through it again. Like I always say, imagine what Sacramento would look like now. So this is another one. So we're looking at this. This is in Del Paso, which is right outside of downtown. It's like one little exit away. But this is a bowling alley that's sat empty for at least 50 years, right? It's just sat there. No one's done anything with it. Next slide. And then this is an empty lot that is next to it. So nice little murals on it, but when you talk about use, there's that building, there's the empty space, and then now that actually the next building next to it is actually empty too, right? And so when we talk about being able to be in a power seat of purchasing buildings and property and then changing them and imagining them to be different things, this is what we came up with next. And so this is a project that we're working on to like really transform that space into a place where micro businesses can have their space, because that's one of the things we want to like foster is like creative entrepreneurs, but then also give a space for the community to connect, hang out, musicians to come out, hang out, play music, and like really convene, right? But then this becomes a space that, oh, I know that I can go to in Del Paso where I'm going to find my folks, right? So that's like the work that we've been doing. Next slide. And this is another space that we're looking at and reimagining. So this space just sits empty. This one is on 28th and U downtown, or 28th and T. And it's just an empty space, but we said like, what if we could create housing for creative entrepreneurs where they could have their workshop at the bottom and then live upstairs. Now we've just solved this issue of space for people to create, but then also places for people to live. And then we can add in a community connecting component where everybody opens up on the first Friday, and then you can come and check out their work and their workshops, right? So this is what we call the nest. Next slide. So it's that, like a live workspace where creatives can live. And these are for sale models, so folks can actually own it and create equity in themselves by investing in themselves and in their business. Next slide. So these are just renderings that have been approved by the city. We've gone through all the processes to ensure it to happen. And, you know, we're working on making sure that like little scale projects like this are actualized. Next slide. So yeah, you can see like if everyone's open their doors and like people are walking around, it creates this sense of community and then the collectiveness of working together. Next slide. And then I always put pictures like this up because, you know, we want folks of culture to be able to express themselves and be themselves. So this is our mood board for the space. It's like we have spaces like this where we can thrive and be ourselves. It creates a more vibrant city. Next slide. So this is on the corner of 35th and Broadway in Oak Park. This is actually our HQ. So if any of you all want to come visit us, we're there pretty much Wednesday through Sunday. Yeah, we're closed on Monday and Tuesday. But one of the things that we do with this space is we constantly transform it to get folks to come in, but it's also giving this creative space for creative individuals to like bring their collective talent to the space as well. So this is an installation that we did. It's called Be Well Sacramento. And on the outside of the windows, we used the space to connect the community with what we were doing on the inside. Next slide. And then we switched it out. And then we did a campaign called Made with Melanin, where we took you know, the Pantone colors and then put it all on the windows. So if you can go back one slide, it's actually the same windows, right? And then go to the next one. It's those windows that are in the front right there. We just switch them out and create like bigger campaigns with them. Next slide. And so this is what one of the installations looked like. So we teamed up with the Black Artist Foundry here, and we collaborated with all Black artists during Black History Month to create this campaign called Made with Melanin. Next slide. And then, you know, created a t-shirt line, which was sold inside the store. Next slide. And then we created this campaign, and this is like the actualization of the t-shirts and then also the sweatshirts. But one of the things I always bring up here is just the attention to detail that we went through to make sure that this happened. Like, it's launched during Black History Month with a bigger campaign with the space, but then also we're using Black creatives who are in the dance field. So they're from the SAC Dance Lab. And then we used a Black photographer and a Black graphic designer to create the whole campaign to be really inclusive of that side of Made with Melanin. Right? Next slide. And so these are some of the images that we put out as like just marketing for the campaign. We also do like brand activation. So one of our clients is Sierra Nevada. And when we talk about creativity and a lane for creatives, like Jared, who is our visual designer on the team, actually built these strange beasts, right? He used to be a set designer for a theater, but when the pandemic hit, the theater closed. And so I took that opportunity. I was like, yo, come work for us. And so he literally took the can of Strange Beasts, and we're sitting in a meeting with the client, and he looks at it, he's like, I can make this. And I was like, no way, bro, you can't. Like, what? And he's like, dude, this is easy. And we're like, what? So that Strange Beast on the left side is actually 6.5 feet tall, right? Yeah. And so then the other one where the DJ is like a smaller one, and that one's probably about 2 to 3 feet tall. So it's like using creativity in all of these different ways and then connecting with clients that pay us really good money to do this. And the interesting thing about this is they came to us and they were like, you guys can do this? And we said, yeah, cool, we could do it, yeah. Just sign here, okay, cool, thanks, collect the check, and we'll go. And so we did this, and we did like an installation at our store for a weekend, right? And then they came back to us, and then they had us build 12 more of them, which was another contract. And now those 12 travel all throughout the state of California, and like people are engaging with them and interacting with them. And then they came back to us again, and we created, I don't have it on here, but we did a 2-day pop-up for their Still the One beer. And it was one of those ones where we literally took over a space with 7 days and built out a space, and it lasted for 2 days, and then we were out in 4 days, and it was like it never happened, and it was just like great. Next slide. And then this is just one of the markets we produce. It's called Neighborhood Market. So it's about celebrating what's good in the hood. Next slide. Using graphic design and using local people. So these are folks that are in the community. These are entrepreneurs that actually have tents at the event that we do. But we wanted to utilize them in the campaign and then bring in like this creative element that makes it feel fun and loose. So our graphic designer, Veronica, picked this up, and was just like, wow. And then our photographer, Doug Cupid, took all the photos. So it's like when we collaborate and make these things happen, it comes out with dope marketing, which we still use. And so we launched this market in Elk Grove starting May 4th. And then it's a weekly market where people hang out, right? And so we take these, put all this campaign out, and then next slide. This is what the space looks like. Right? And so we have vendors there. You can connect with community, buy things, sell things, hang out. And then on like busy days, like this is probably like a lighter day or it was probably closer to dark actually, because it kind of fills out. But next slide. Typically, like this is what it looks like all day when it's there. It's from 4 to 8, right? So these are just some of the small steps that we're taking to move forward with our community and make Sacramento mighty. But like tying it back to the first part of my talk, next slide. I look at us and we're just one small sardine, right? Like this is just our lane. This is the things that we're doing. But I always say, like, imagine, next slide. Imagine what like we could move like if we were in community and moved by designs. Next slide. It would look like that swarm that I showed you at the beginning where we're all moving together and we're really making an impact in the community. Next slide. Yep, next slide. That's it. That's all. So yeah, if you guys want to tap in, just take a picture of that QR code and that has all of our information.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I just find it so inspiring because I feel like the work that you do.
Oh, no, take a picture of that.
Oh, I feel like a lot like the work really encompasses actually my current project for one of my classes. It's like transforming this Asian supermarket into something that better serves modern needs post-pandemic. And so then like a lot of what like the examples you showed really inspired me. I just think it's so amazing, like the work that you do, building this community together. And I totally agree that like there's a lot of barriers, but like together, unified, we could overcome it.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'd love to see the project that you're working on. So.
Oh, I will let you show it to you. It's still in the early stages, but
Yeah. That's it. That's all I have. Right? So.
anyone have like any questions for Roshan or comments?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I just touching upon the whole, the notion of a lot of people, a lot of good creators coming together to create something amazing. That's sort of what we're trying to do with this club and with goods, leaving it open to not just graphic designers, but photographers, artists. I mean, there was somebody who was like construction studies who was interested in the club, so that's really what we're trying to do. I have a question in regards to just how can we as students sort of create the impact that you're making, like real like fiscal impact in the community. Like where do we start?
Yeah, I think what I tell clients and what I've worked through with folks is like it starts with having a dope concept, right? Like when you can get the concept down and then really get like what you're designing for, then all the pieces start to come together. So that's one piece. So having that concept down. But I also think like partnership and leveraging, like I think about for you guys, like if I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if you guys have this group, this club, this collective, then you also sit inside of a bigger group, club, collective, which is like Sac State, right? And so then just informing them about what you're doing and then pushing it to like, like I know Cameron Law at the Innovation and Entrepreneur, what's it called? Is that what it's called? It's not a club, it's like the center. Right?
Yeah.
It's like the maker space and all that stuff. Like, so there's things that are right here in your current ecosystem that can help you leverage. And he's like a door that can get you guys to other spaces. So you could like say like, yo, we're forming this collective conceptually, this is what we're gonna do. And then lean on other folks in just this space and say like, how can you guys help? What I found is like by bringing people to the table and allowing them to be a part of it, like, and that's the part that you have to work on is like not having like hoarding it, but like you're saying, like leaving it open, because that's when someone will be like, well, actually, I know so-and-so and I can bring so-and-so to the table. And then that person opens the door for you and then you go into another space. Like it's literally like leveraging all of your partnerships that you have in your smaller ecosystem, and not looking over like Sac State is like a powerhouse when it comes to like the region, right? But then they also, and they use like my wife and I, because we met here at Sac State and we built our business here at Sac State. So they use us for the Made at Sac State campaign all the time, right? Because they're like, hey, yo, no, they're with us.
Yeah.
But they always are looking for like folks that they can like claim and be like, no, they came from Sac State. So I think it's still up. Like when the last time I went into like the university bookstore, it was like a big poster. It says Made at Sac State with me and my wife on it. And it was just like, whoa, that's crazy. But like use that, you know, because they're looking for that too. And they want you guys to succeed here. So it's like you guys are kind of baked into like this nice little culture that if you like connect the dots just inside here, you can really make some moves. You know? That's why I always come back, you know, like because they support me and they'll put me up on the billboard. Like I was just up on the billboard because I got the top 25 Black change makers in Sacramento award. And so I was up on the billboard and I'm like, thanks, Sac State. But it was an ad that was like, these guys were made at Sac State. And I'm like, ooh, you know, but it allows for like me to have a billboard that multiple people see. But it's again leveraging like my relationship here, you know. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, it definitely.
Yeah.
I have a question kind of following up with that. Like in a real world setting, when you talk to like your clients pitching like these concepts, what would you say would be like, there's like, would you consider any tips to be like, that would help be more effective in convincing them that your concept or campaign is like worth it, like, you know, worth the effort?
Do you want the real answer or do you want
I don't mind either.
the real answer? I mean, honestly, really, what I found is you have to be in collaboration and allow for them to be at the table to create the vision, right? So my fake answer was just like, just design it like they give you the idea because they want to say they have the idea. That's what I was gonna say. But it's like really, you know, it's like you have a skill set, right? But they have input. And I feel like what typically happens with us as creatives is like we'll create something and we don't want anyone to change it because we think it's a great idea. You know, and I saw my team do this just a couple weeks ago where they built out this step and repeat with like this dope little like photo op for an event. And the client was like, well, I don't know if we should have boxes there. Like, maybe somebody will trip them. So they're giving like their feedback, and my team is like, well, no, but it's really cool. It's like really, really cool. Like, yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. And sometimes I just sit in a space of just observation and just like really like use that as a moment to then afterwards be like, hey, this is where it went wrong. But in the meeting, the client was like, well, it sounds like you have your mind made up and my input doesn't matter. I'll just go on mute now. And it's like, yeah, you know, because they got so carried away in trying to pitch their idea instead of listening to like what the client was saying and being like, you know what, it's a great idea. We'll incorporate it into it. And then now you've gotten what you wanted done, but it's not necessarily mine, you know, because at the end of the day, especially with the clients, like they just want to be included. Like they truly do sit in a space. Like it's funny. Like when I meet with some clients, they'll be like, I just love you. Like I've seen your TED talk. I watch all your things. I do, you know, it's just like, what? Like, oh, but it is like, we have a superpower as creatives and that they can't do that. And so they sit in awe of us. But then if we come in and we're like, no, this is our idea, you know, it creates like a barrier where it's like, all right, what are you thinking? How do I help you bring that to life? you know, and then it's like, oh, well, I was thinking this, I was thinking that, and then it's like, okay, we'll take it back, visual, and then they're like, that's what I was thinking, but can we move this, can we move this, okay, cool, got it, so it just becomes this ebb and flow of like really being in service to like helping them create their vision, along with utilizing our tools and talents to make it happen, you know, so it's a little bit of sometimes it's like, yeah, no, we're gonna do it this way, but we're gonna act like we took your feedback.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. I feel like really confirms, like as students in design, we're studying and all my professors, like they talk about situations or ask questions like, if you were put in a situation where the client picks your worst option,
Yeah, yeah,
how do you make them feel like what they chose was not the right one?
yeah,
And,
yeah.
like most often, I actually had this happen to me. One time, they wanted a certain design, the QR code like right in the center of the design.
Yeah.
And I convinced them by showing a side-by-side comparison with and without the QR code. And but then finally made a decision where it doesn't have to be like a central part of the design, but kind of off the center.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a nice learning experience that way. And like just a tip for people, make sure to show comparisons to the client so they can see the differences. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right, this looks better that way.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. Yeah.
Yeah, because you know what I find in a lot of different fields is I'll never forget this, guys. I'm gonna tell you the story, and it really pissed me off. Like we had been doing this thing called the Good Street Food and Design Market in Del Paso, had won like the American Planning Association Local Vision Award, which is like a big deal when you talk about real estate. And we didn't know it at the time. We were just like, oh, some award. And like our development like partners were like, no, that's a big deal. Like you guys beat out this big agency, this big person. And we were like, oh, no, we're just doing a pop-up market at a warehouse. But we had been doing it for like 3 years, and the council member at the time didn't see the vision of what we were doing, right? So we had just written them off. We were like, we're going to continue to do what we do, right? And so we were doing the event, and then the building owner came in with a concept. He had a pitch deck. He had like all the visuals, and then he had us at the table, and then another operator at the table who runs a 7-day or runs a farmer's market. And he sat us all with the city council member, and he's like, I have this idea to, in my building, do 7-day-a-week farmer's market. And we were like, that's not possible. Like you have the person who runs like most of the farmers markets, and then you have us, which do specialty markets. That's going to kill the vendors if there's nobody there. Like we argued with him, and then the council member was like, you know what? I like the way this looks. I'm going to give you $20,000 so you can get like work on this. And I was like, whoa, like you haven't given us a penny, and we've been bringing 3,000 people out to your neighborhood for years. And I was like, because he had a pretty visual. And that's when like I really learned. That was a $20,000 lesson I learned. Like I don't go anywhere without like a visual now and be like, see it? Yeah. Because that was like, it doesn't matter about the impact and the reality of it. Like what people really want to see is like vision.
The proof.
And no, because the proof was in like actually bringing people to this corridor, right? But it's just a picture, the visual is like, whoa, $20,000 lesson that I learned. I share that so you guys don't have to go through that, right? Like we could save $20,000. But yeah, like showing that visual. That's why I say like graphic design is a very powerful tool when you use it correctly. So show the vision. Show the vision. How good.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
like some of the stuff you showed, like I've seen it before, and like they were super memorable. Like the Ninja Boy, I remember just driving
Oh,
down
yeah.
P Street, and I'm like, that looks dope. What is that? So
Yeah.
I congratulate you for making like really memorable like, spaces, especially, and also like marrying like the community together. Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. I love you. Good night.